As is always the case, you need to make sure the firearm is free and clear before doing any work on it. The magazine release on an AK47 is right here. It is a paddle style magazine release. You would simply push in on that toward the magazine with your thumb, and that will release the magazine, and then it would come out. Now an AK47 magazine locks in right there on the front, inside a little lip that's on the inside of the receiver, and on this locking lug in the back, locks onto the paddle itself. And then, so you would simply put it on the front and rock it back to lock it in place. To remove, just the opposite. And as we can see, the magazine is free and clear. Go ahead and open up the breech, and as we can see, the breech area is also free and clear. So we're good to start looking at the controls and features of the AK47. As already mentioned, the AK47, the magazine release is right here. The paddle style magazine release goes back and forth to lock or unlock the magazine. Of course, there's the trigger. It is a single action only trigger. This is our charging handle right here. Right there. And that's the bolt assembly. Actually, that's the carrier. The bolt is inside it. This is our safety. This safety also doubles as a dust cover. This section right here that the charging handle and bolt carrier goes back into, when you put the safety on, it covers that up to help prevent stuff from getting inside the action. It also will then block you from being able to charge the handle all the way back. So it can only go back to right there, not far enough to actually fully load and charge the weapon. This particular safety also has a cutout in it that you can lock the bolt back into to hold the bolt open. Most AK-47s do not have any mechanism to lock back the bolt automatically, even on the last round or even manually. There just simply is no provision for it. So this was developed as a way to go ahead and lock that back. So the way that would work is you would simply pull the bolt back and lift it up and put the bolt handle in the notch. Then to release, you would simply lower it down, like so. The rear sight is just a typical notch sight, adjustable for elevation. The front sight is a simple post that is adjustable for windage and initial elevation to sight it in. Elevation would be by screwing the post in or out. Windage would be by driving the wedge right or left. It does require a special tool to really be able to do that with any type of precision. So we'll go ahead and take a look a little bit more in depth here. That's pretty much it as far as all the controls. Now this particular one also has a rail assembly on the side to mount it's an optic rail of some type. It would typically go lock onto this and come over the top and then hold the optic above the dust cover. This is a fairly typical AK-47 style. So we'll go ahead and take a look at breakdown. So let's go ahead and zoom in so we can get a closer look at the parts as we go. So I'll take a closer look at that sight. It is graduated here. This would be in meters. And it's adjustable by pressing in the button that will unlock it, and then it can go up or down as necessary. Again, the front sight, there's that front post, and there's the wedges on either side that you would then be able to go right or left with it for adjustment. Let's go ahead and take a look at disassembly. So for disassembly of the AK-47, this is your disassembly button right here. That is what holds the dust cover on. The dust cover is retained in the front. There's a groove in the front trunnion right underneath the sight. It's kind of hard to see, but the front dust cover goes into that groove. In the back, it's held in place. This locking button goes through a hole in the back, which basically holds it down. So you need to push that button in and then lift up on the dust cover. So just push the button in. And lift up on the dust cover, like so. We can set the dust cover aside. And there we have that locking button. That's our recoil spring that goes into the bolt carrier. That recoil spring is also what provides the spring force for that button. And so to remove the recoil spring, you would simply push forward on that button. It locks into its a dovetail type mount. So you would simply push forward with it and then lift up, and then that will slide out. The recoil springs are captive. There's generally like a collapsing rod. That in this case, the rod is consisted of two U-shaped pieces of metal that just collapse into each other. So we can set that aside. Next we have our bolt carrier, and to remove that you would simply slide it all the way back. This is our hammer right there and fire control assembly. But just go and slide the bolt all the way back, then it will lift up and out. And we'll take a look at the fire control assembly. There's our hammer. The safety is right here. That lever on the outside connects to this internal piece here. It's like a U-shaped piece of metal which goes and then blocks the seared hammer assembly from being able to move. And this is as far as you would really want to take this apart to clean it. You have access to everything in here. Further disassembly, you really need to be careful, know what you're doing. All of these are under spring tension. There's various springs and everything. You have the hammer spring, trigger springs. Everything is housed right in here with pins. The safeties generally can come out fairly easily. You would just simply rotate it up and they lift out. In this particular case, though, there is a spring attached to it right here, so I'm not going to remove this one. Generally, or typically, you don't have a separate spring tied to that. So in this case, I'll just go ahead and leave it in, because there again, this is as far as you need to disassemble this. You have access to everything now. You have the breech assembly here, and the chamber area. You can get into the access to the barrel, clean all the rails, everything down. Now this is a stamped steel receiver. Now the AK47 has stamped or machined steel receivers. This particular one's stamped. The top metal edges are what make the upper rail, and the bolt carrier has a groove in it on both sides, right here and over here, and that's what would engage into that rail to lock it into place. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the bolt and carrier. So this is our carrier assembly. This is the bolt right here. To remove the bolt, you would simply just turn it and then it can remove. There's the locking piece here that engages into this slot, and that's actually what will then turn it in place to lock it in place. That's the locking lug right there that locks into the front trunnion. This locks into the carrier. So just like that. And when the bolt goes forward and backwards, it would cause the bolt to lock as the carrier moves. It locks into place. This is the gas piston. So as far as maintenance with this, you just want to wipe everything down, clean it up good, get any corrosion, everything off of it. The bolt assembly, firing pin right there. It's an inertial firing pin, so the hammer would hit it and then it would fly forward and fire on the cartridge. That is our extractor right here. The ejector is that piece of metal right there. So the extractor will grab a hold of the rim of the cartridge. As it pulls it back, that ejector rides in this slot right here, and as it comes back, basically it would then poke out like so, and that's what would kick the cartridge out. So no further disassembly is really needed on the bolt itself. You can get access to everything to clean it here. If you would need to disassemble it further, there are some pins in here that hold everything in place. I would recommend that you don't really take it apart any further unless there's a breakage of some part, and then you should probably take it to a gunsmith for them to work on it. So further disassembly, this lever right here is what locks this upper gas tube in place. So you would lift the lever up. Now, sometimes those are very, very stubborn. So a lot of times it's very hard to lift up. In that case, there's a trick that you actually use the rail channel on the bolt carrier, and basically you just put that tab right there in that rail, and then you can use that to unlock it. Now in this case it lifts up pretty easy anyway, but so once you lift that lever up, the gas tube assembly will lift up and out. The front goes right there on the gas block, and you would just need to remove this to clean it if you needed to. So that's really as far as you need to go with that. The lower hand grip can be removed. There's a pin right here which goes onto the inside, and from the inside you would need to flip that up. Now again, this pin a lot of times is very, very stubborn, but in this particular case, this firearm, it comes up very easily. You would just lift up on that pin, come forward with it, and then that allows this collar to come forward like so. That pin actually locks into the channel in the barrel right here, but then you can remove the handguard. There again, there's not really a reason to remove the handguard unless you just needed to really get in there to clean it out good. At this point, this is about as disassembled as you want to go with the lower receiver. One other area I will point out, this has a muzzle brake on it. It's retained, it's threaded on. Now in this case, it is left-handed threads, so you would turn it opposite direction as you normally would to screw things on. There's a little plunger pin right here, which locks into a detent on the muzzle brake itself to keep it from rotating. As you can see, it actually is almost loose on there. But to remove that, you would simply push in on the pin, and you can just push it in with your finger, and then you can start turning it out. And then that would remove to allow you access to get to the actual muzzle crown of the barrel itself. Then to put it back on, and like I said, it's opposite, so you turn it counterclockwise to tighten it. And you tighten it down, pushing the button in each time it comes to the lock until it won't go in anymore, and then loosen it until it locks in. So reassembly is just the opposite. There's a socket in the front, right here, in the stamped metal, and there's a section on the handguard, and you would simply put that in that socket, push the handguard down, slide that collar into position, put the lever back. And there again, that lever usually is very stiff. This one operates very, very easily. The gas tube, you would simply put the front over the gas block. Make sure your lever is up. lock it in place, and then put the lever back down. That locks the front. You have your carrier assembly right here. The round shaft of the bolt goes into the hole that's in the carrier. And then you would turn it until that piece that engages into the carrier itself aligns with that notch. And you can't put it in the wrong place. So you just basically keep going until it rotates in. And then it goes forward. You would put the end of the piston into the hole of the gas tube. You would put align the rails, make it to where you can see it here, align the rails with the area. There's a little opening. I'm going to pull that out so you can see it. The rails come back and then it opens up in the very back. And that's where you would need to put those rails here so that they will go down in there. Once it's in place, you simply slide it forward, and that will lock it in. Now we can see how that locks. If you look underneath here, as the bolt carrier goes forward, there's our bolt right there. Now as it goes forward, keep watching it. There's the shaft of it. You can see it started to turn there, and it turns and locks into place as that carrier goes forward. So when you fire the gun, the gas pressure will be tapped right here off the barrel, come into the gas tube, push on that piston, which pushes the carrier back. As the carrier comes back, it will come back a ways, and as you can see, the bolt hasn't moved yet. Then it will slowly start to turn. You can see it turn there until it's unlocked, and then the bolt itself will open up. Then it will keep coming back until the cartridge is ejected with the ejector right there. Then the recoil spring will drive it forward. As it goes forward, it'll pick up a new cartridge out of the magazine and rechamber the next round of fire. So to finish reassembly, once you have the carrier in the forward position, put the recoil spring in the top hole in that carrier, and it goes inside quite a ways. That allows room for the recoil spring. There's those dovetail sections right there, which will lock into those little rail sections right here. So you'd simply push forward, align those rail sections, and let it go in place, and then that holds the recoil spring. Now, it's not really recommended, but you can actually fire the gun now with that dust cover not even in place. Everything will function as it should, but it's not really recommended because there's an awful lot of parts here, and it would actually be dangerous, but that it is possible. At this point, the weapon could be fired. So to reinstall the dust cover to actually make it safe, and that also helps prevent should there be any gases or anything, or if a cartridge slightly is out of battery, this dust cover will help to protect and eject the material out of the ejection port. So you have that front rail groove in the front there, And that's what you put the front of the dust cover in. Just like that. Then the back will go over that button, so you need to push the button in slightly. Like so. And then just smack it down. And then the whole button will come out of the back of the cover, and it's all locked in place. Do a function check. And we're all reassembled.